The Butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein's horrific crimes. What drives an ordinary man to cross the line between life and death? To turn his home into a house of horrors and his victims into trophies of madness? A secret darker than anyone could have imagined was waiting to be found on a farm in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, surrounded by endless cornfields and silence. Neighbors thought Ed Gein was just a shy and strange man for many years. But what cops found in his farmhouse in 1957 would shock the world, inspire generations of filmmakers, and change what evil really means forever. This is the story of the Butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein. Before we can understand the acts, we need to go into the man's mind and home. Augusta hated almost everyone who was near her. She moved her family to a farmhouse in Plainfield that was far away from everything. This way, she could keep her two boys, Ed and his older brother Henry, away from what she thought was the moral decline in society. Her rules were set in stone. There was church, readings from the Bible, and talks that went on and on about how bad women are. Not any friends, not making friends. No contact with anything outside of her narrow view of the world. Ed loved his mom very much. She was holy to him, and he feared her anger. Ed was left alone with Augusta after his father died in 1940, and his brother died in a fire in 1944 for unknown reasons. Everything that held Ed to reality fell apart when she died the next year. He locked the door to her bedroom and left it exactly the way it was, perfect, untouched, and stuck in time. The rest of the house got dirty and dark over time. After all these years, Ed Gein was now living by himself in a rundown cabin. He read magazines about Nazis, cannibals, and the human body most nights when he was by himself. He became interested in death and women's bodies in an unsettling way, and this interest would soon become real. Ed started going to nearby cemeteries late at night. Later, he admitted that he often got lost in a trance-like state, sometimes never coming back with anything, and other times finding the freshly buried bodies of middle-aged women who looked a lot like his mother. He killed them, took their skin and bones home, and used them to make what he called art. The farmhouse turned into a gory museum with bowls made from skulls, chairs covered in human skin, masks made from women's faces, and even a belt made from nipples. Gein's woman suit, which was made from the skin of his victims and sewed together, was one of the scariest things he ever made. At night, he would put it on, walk around the house, and become his mom. On November 16, 1957, the illusion of routine fell apart. The owner of a hardware shop in Plainfield, 58-year-old Bernice Worden, was last seen that morning. There were bloodstains on the floor, her store was empty, and her truck was gone. The last thing she bought and wrote down in her receipt book was antifreeze. Ed Gein's name was on that ticket. Bernice's son, Deputy Sheriff Frank Worden, quickly thought Ed was guilty. The cops were shocked by what they found when they went to the Gein farm that night. Inside the shed, with only one bulb for light, Bernice Worden's body was hung by her legs like a deer. She had been cut in half and her organs removed. The home itself was scarier than any nightmare. There were jars of preserved organs, boxes of bones, and furniture made from human bones. Police found a collection of human skulls that had been turned into household things in one room. In another, there was a mask on the wall that was made from a woman's face. The smell was terrible. Later, a cop called it a house of horrors, something out of a crazy person's mind. Gein was cool and almost polite when he was brought in to be questioned. He admitted that he killed Bernice Worden and Mary Hogan, the owner of a bar who had been missing for 3 years. He talked about using dead bodies to make lampshades and clothes in a matter-of-fact way. "I wanted to be close to my mother," he said when asked why he did it. Ed Gein's crimes were talked about all over the place. Plainfield, Wisconsin, was swarmed by reporters, and the small town quickly became the center of national horror. Gein was found to be mentally fit to stand trial in 1968, after more than a decade of therapy. He was accused of killing Bernice Worden and was found to be guilty but legally insane. He was never charged with killing Mary Hogan or stealing from graves, even though his statements were clear enough to prove them. He read quietly and did small jobs while spending the rest of his life in mental hospitals, and he was said to have shown no remorse. Ed Gein passed away on July 26, 1984, at the age of 77. He had lung cancer that made it impossible for him to breathe. He was buried next to his mother, the person whose death started everything. Gein was, in the words of forensic psychologist Dr. George Armitage, a man whose world ended when his mother died and who spent the rest of his life trying to resurrect her through other women. He didn't kill because he enjoyed it. He did it because he had a crazy need to connect and be in charge. Gein wasn't like a lot of serial killers who kill for power, revenge, or lust. He was going crazy with his fantasy, a scary sign of love gone crazy. Ed Gein's crimes shocked the whole world and changed both criminal psychology and pop culture forever. Hollywood took ideas from his story right away. The 1960 movie Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock took a lot of ideas from Gein's obsession with his mother. Norman Bates was based on Gein. The 1974 movie The Texas Chainsaw Massacre had masks made of human skin and furniture made of bones. The 1991 movie The Silence of the Lambs had Buffalo Bill, a killer who made a woman suit just like Gein. In many ways, Gein set the standard for horror stories today. He was the link between the real monster and the monsters in movies. He was a warning that scary stories are often based on real events. In addition to changing movies, Gein's case also changed how crimes are investigated. It showed how important psychological profiling, keeping proof safe, and checking on people's mental health are in the criminal justice system. His mix of necrophilia, psychosis, and fixation on his mother became important material for forensic psychiatry schools all over the world to study. Even now, decades later, his story still scares and interests people. He killed Mary Hogan, Bernice Worden, and many other women whose graves he upset. They were not only victims of a crazy person, but also of a system that didn't see him coming. We have to think hard about how to spot crazy before it turns into murder after hearing his story. What duty do societies have to help people who are alone or mentally ill? Worst of all, if someone like Ed Gein could live quietly among us for years, who could be hiding behind the next closed door? Not much of Ed Gein's world is left today. In 1958, a fire destroyed his home. It was probably started by a local who was sick of all the curious people looking at the dead bodies. His grave in Plainfield Cemetery has been broken into many times, with pieces of his headstone being stolen by people who like scary things. But the story keeps going. Even today, the name Ed Gein still gives people chills. Not because of what he made out of human skin, but because of what he stands for. The unimaginable darkness that can live inside a normal man. Ed Gein didn't live in a scary house. He lived in the house he made from his own scary thoughts. And sometimes that scares me more than any ghost story. Subscribe and join us again if stories like this make you want to learn more about the minds of history's most evil people. The next story might be closer to home than you think.